Okay. So welcome. So it is 7:03, and this is the October 27th, 2021 meeting of the Lake Boone Commission. We have all three commissioners present. And
you know, there's a little bit of a background noise from somebody. If everybody could go on mute.
It was Mr. Gray.
There we go.
All right. All right. And so let me just quickly run through our agenda. And we do have a few kind of meaty things to work through today. So we'll try to move along in the other areas as quickly as we can. We will have start out with public comment. We have one set of meeting minutes to review and approve. We're going to spend a chunk of time on our herbicide treatment, both kind of where we stand with the year-end report recommendations and overall action plan, which is also, what are we going to do going forward? We are at the tail end of a 3-year contract. We have at least one bill for payment and need to decide on the ones that we're holding on Solitude. So we'll talk through that. We have end of season planning, the drawdown, buoys, boat, etc. So kind of some of those things still left to be done in those spaces. We do need to talk a bit about motorboat, the boat motor and potential replacement of that, which will impact our request for funding this year, which is the next agenda item, which is our FY23 budget, which specifically Hudson moved their date up a month. So normally we would not have to deal with this until the end of November, but we have to deal with it this week. So we'll need to talk through what's involved in that. And then we'll have some time around just update on what's happening on water quality, Healthy Lake Boone initiative, and I think a little bit of what the LBA is doing with the Cattell, some work on the Cattell property input. Then we'll have old business, new business, look at when we need to meet next, and be done. So, all right. So let's jump right in on public comment. Do we have anyone on the call that has public comment today? Oh. So Dave, you're coming across like a chipmunk. It's very, very strange. Nope, same thing.
Oh,
there
okay.
You go. That's better.
Different microphone. Okay. Okay. I don't really have a public comment, but I do have to leave at 7:30. So.
Okay.
All
right. Alrighty, so we will move on. So meeting minutes. We have the minutes from our last meeting, which was September 22nd. Dan did a great job capturing those, got them to us early. So I've given input that's been incorporated into what we have in front of us for review and approval. So I don't know, Conray, if you have any additional.
I did not. I read them after you did, which is always a good idea. They've already been fixed.
All right, then. We have a motion to approve the 22nd?
Approve the minutes as submitted.
I second.
All right. Any further discussion? None. So all in favor? Aye. And that is unanimous. So we have approved those minutes. And again, Dan, if you'll make the notation on the date on those, and then you'll get those back out and onto the website.
Yep, I will do that.
All right. All right. Next thing is the herbicide treatment year-end report recommendations and kind of our action plan going forward. So this is a kind of a number of things. The year-end report is something that we from Solitude they normally commit to by the end of the year, so December. But we have asked them to provide it sooner. They did provide it sooner, and we have since learned from looking at the data that it really was not a completed report. It was something that had really not been finished at all. So they, in conversations with them today, I spoke with the two of their management team and the biologist today. They asked that we just basically scrap that one that we did receive a month or so ago. The maps themselves that show where things were done and the kind of the level of issue in those areas, they say are accurate. Those do reflect what the biologist did, but none of the tables that showed the actual results are correct, and they have not put together their recommendations yet. So we have the field notes from Amanda. So at least that gives us some sense, but I don't know, maybe some of you can make better sense of it than I did, but I think I'll wait to see what they actually, how they document that and what recommendations they have that come out of that. They have agreed to get us it by the middle of November. So we will continue to hold them to that as the deadline. So I don't think there's anything else to discuss on the report, because what we saw as the report when I put out this agenda, we thought we actually had the annual report or year-end report, and at this point we really do not. So on that space, I don't know, Dan or Conway, if there's anything else you want to talk about on that end of year report.
Now, only just to check in with Kirk, this of course is just one more piece of data that helps us understand the lake. And I don't know if Kirk, if getting that to you by mid-November is okay in terms of your timing.
Yeah, the thing that we're really waiting for right now, Dan, is the sediment report.
Yeah.
And the two of those will probably go hand in hand a little bit. The weeds dying, settling down, and what comes out of the sediment are certainly going to be related. So we expected the sediment report by now. It hasn't come. Andrew's working on that, but mid-November sounds about right.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, excellent. Then I do want to take a few minutes and talk a little bit about our action plan going forward, because we do need to start the process of an RFP. And I know, Dan, you've started to think a little bit about that and looking at getting some materials that from previous RFP. So I know Conway dug out of the archives and Andy both kind of pulled out of the archives the 2016, where I think it was not a sole source, which I think is helpful. I don't know that we actually even had a true one for the 2019.
I believe that. Yeah.
I have the sole source justification if you'd like it, Dan, that we did in 19.
Actually, that would be good, Conway, if you have that, to send that along to us, because it will help us kind of understand, depending on what we, find as an alternative vendor or vendors, kind of it will help us think through that.
Think through it maybe as a sole, not this source.
Yeah. Excellent. Okay.
That's going to be hard because the bidding process. We'll put the RFP out, we'll get bids from two different organizations, then we'll have to evaluate the bids.
Yes.
And at that point, we'll need a little bit of an evaluation process, but You know, if one of them comes in substantially less for exactly the same service, it's hard to say no.
Yeah, we also, I would expect we'd want to have some way to include past performance as one of the criteria. Because clearly they've been dissatisfied with Solitude. Any new bidder, we wouldn't have that experience. Maybe they would need a recommendation from somebody. We're hoping we'll get more than one bid so that we can really, because our dissatisfaction with Solitude.
It's probably a discussion you should have with the town manager and Stowe on how to talk about past performance.
Yeah,
I don't know about that one.
yeah, we will.
So Dan, I know you were gonna just check in with Denise in general about doing, so do we have any sense? I mean, I think there's some urgency to get started because, as you know, I think we all know the wheels turn slowly on some things. So do we have any sense of, you know, timing and what she may, you know, any direction she might have for us?
Yeah, so I'm just trying to look back. I know I spoke with her. I think Kathy also did. That she understands the issues that we've had with Solitude. Maybe you also have talked to Denise about Solitude. I think we should just go ahead and move forward with the RFP. You know, their first pass is typically, I think, in around May. So we need to make sure we have the replacement in before then. That gives us November, December, January, February, March, April, May. That's like 6 months or so. But you know, that time gets eaten up, as Conray said. There's a review process. So I think if we try to get it out within the next couple of weeks, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
One of the other things that can happen with multiple bidders, and I lived through this with Jerry Smith and Lee Lyman, is Lee won the contract and Smith objected. And that cost me like 3 months.
What
So
happened?
A losing bidder can object to a winning bidder.
Oh, objection. Yeah, yeah.
So if we choose, I don't know, A, B can absolutely object, and it could cost us a lot of time.
Mm-hmm.
And that particular year it was far too painful because Lee won, Jerry objected, the objection was resulted in Jerry winning the bid. And then when we had problems, Jerry ran away and Lee was nice enough to come back. So it's, you know, things can happen. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Dan, what was the name of the potential, the other company that you thought might be a potential?
Yeah, now I'm gonna have to look it up in my records. It's a company in Connecticut that does actually work in this area.
Mhm.
I'm seeing if I can find it in my notes here. I'll have to look it up, but
Okay.
they did say they would respond to an RFP. So we'd have at least one other party that
Okay.
we expect would respond.
Okay. And I'm honestly, I mean, I did some hunting on the web back many months ago. And I didn't come up with any, you know, additional vendors as potentials. I don't know if
Yeah,
anyone
and we
else
did.
has.
We also Kathy also checked with several of her colleagues in the similar role who have similarly expressed frustration with Solitude, and that was one. I think it was Concord was the one that pointed to this person from Connecticut, his
Oh, interesting.
company,
Okay.
and. You know, there may be others. There is, in fact, as I understand, a state bid list that is companies that are qualified, pre-qualified, and there's some. I think with like the sole source, that was one of the justifications that Solitude was on that bid list, and we'll look through that list as well to see if there are any others that have this kind of capability.
Okay. So is that something you know how to,
I don't. Kathy does. I don't.
okay.
But I'm hoping. I don't know. Is Red on?
No.
In,
Yeah.
Is he on
Because
now?
I'm hoping that Red either can take the lead, or he and I and Kathy can work together somehow to to go through this process here.
There he
I-
is. Red was having
Found
trouble
him.
getting in.
I'm used to a David Gray email that has the link in it.
Yeah. So I don't know if you heard, Red. We were. Did you just log on just now?
Yes,
Yeah, we were, to bring you up to speed, we were talking about the Solitude contract, the annual report that is as Chris mentioned. In fact, they sent the wrong one, or it was incomplete or something, but they did send the field notes. Long story short, we're now talking about doing the new RFP. We have from Conray the 2016 RFP, and I'm wondering if you, perhaps you and Kathy and I, but if you'd be willing to take the lead or be active in updating the RFP, going through the process of posting it, and working, communicating with whoever the applicants are. I'm wondering if you're able to help out with that process.
We can help it. I mean, it depends a little bit on the timing, Dan. I'm kind of swamped for the next week. So, I mean, if it can be past that, I'll have
Yeah,
time. But
we
right
were,
now, I'm
well,
pretty committed.
yeah, I expect we could. I kind of floated if we get it out in a couple weeks, maybe 3 weeks is fine. Give you a week to finish up what you got to do.
Okay.
Meanwhile, I can check in with the town administrator, make sure we've got the right process we're going through.
Okay.
And we have at least that one person in Connecticut. We're hoping there'll be others that we can get to bid.
This, as far as the RFP goes, there's probably not going to be a lot different between the RFP now and the RFP 3 years ago.
Actually, it was 5 years ago. 2016 is the one we found.
Okay.
Yeah, I looked over it. I have a copy of it here. It looks pretty reasonable. I think you have to kind of update it, but it looks
Sure.
pretty reasonable.
Okay, so we have a Word document with that in it?
Yes.
We Word or PDF, but we do have that.
Okay,
it's a Word document, and you should have been copied on it, Red.
And I forwarded it along just moments before this meeting.
okay, well, that's why I haven't seen it yet. Now, I saw there was some discussion about that new herbicide. Do we think you said
Procella?
that's not in the order of conditions?
The order of conditions do not specify the herbicide. They say it needs to be reviewed and approved by each town, whatever the plan is, but the order of conditions fortunately leave that open to whatever is the need. And I don't know whether Dave Gray, you were at the Solitude webinar in which they mentioned it. Do you want to say anything about that?
They were convinced that it is a pretty good product that is more specific and is short-lived, so it doesn't hang around a long time afterwards, and it's very effective. It's systemic too, so it goes right inside the plant and kills the roots. So it sounded good from what I heard.
Do we need to involve Hudson Concom in the review of the RFP?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Well, in review of the RFP or review of the,
yeah, in the preparation of an RFP to go out.
I don't
I-
think so.
Well, I think they would appreciate our at least
Okay.
keeping them informed of
Kept-
how
kept
we're
up to
doing
date,
with this
sure.
process.
Absolutely. Okay,
Yeah, I think maybe I mean, Dan, you've already been in contact with Kathy, so she kind of
Yep.
knows. But maybe
And I can
we
contact Pam as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say, maybe we just give Pam a heads up that we're
Yep.
starting that process and see
Yeah.
if there's anything she, would expect of us, or if she just really wants to see, the draft
Yep.
RFP before we send it.
yeah, and then I can tie in with her, once we start doing the work with Kathy.
Thanks.
Okay. Excellent. All right, anything else on herbicide matters at the moment? Okay, so our next thing is bills for payment, and we might as well start with the hard one. Hard ones. So we have 2 outstanding invoices from Solitude, and we will get a 3rd one in November, sometime in November. So we have to, again, decide whether whether we want to do at this point, kind of recognize some good faith effort on their part and pay perhaps one of those and continue withholding on the other. Let me just look here. So the July bill is $3,906.25, and the September bill is $2,343.75.
Those were contingent. Do you have the contingencies to see if we
Yeah.
can check them off?
Yeah, so let me just look at that here somewhere. So what we had said in our letter to them was that for the July 1, 2021 payment, they must establish the primary contract person for services, reporting, and contractual issues, which in fairness, David is filling that spot, whether we like it or not. He is responding. So I think, we can't say that they haven't established somebody that is not returning our calls, that kind of thing. A designated Light Boone Commission representative or representatives must have detailed discussions with that person about the matters listed above. We did do that with David. Both Red and I have had a call together, and I've had a couple since then. And that person must respond within 3 work days for any contact by LBC. I feel like David has done that. And then the last one is the one that's kind of questionable. Solitude must provide required data on water quality from this year's treatment, including water clarity, dissolved oxygen, temperature, and herbicide residue analysis. And the reason I kind of on this one, I'm not sure we're ever going to get that, right? It's not clear that they did that testing, right? And they can't go back and do it. So I guess the question is, do we feel like we're making progress and we should pay one, or are we gonna stand on, hold until we get the annual, the year-end report?
Chris, I mean, what exactly did he say? He said the report wasn't complete.
What
Even
yeah,
what he
so what
sent
he
us
said-
was 2020 data.
What he said was he pulled the report off. He apparently maybe he did, maybe I don't know. What he said was he pulled the report out because he saw the date on it, and so it apparently maybe Amanda had started work on it or something anyway. So it had a 2021 date on it, and he sent it to us without looking at it probably, or in it clearly without consulting the biologist. So I don't think that he realized that until I talked with him today, and that appears to be what happened. It's not when Amanda was on, the biologist was on the phone. The verbal body language, right? Because I couldn't see, we weren't doing it as Zoom, was that she was a little annoyed because I have a feeling she got caught in the middle of, something got sent that she hadn't really done yet. So That's my sense, Red, of
Okay.
how we ended up with that. The maps that he sent are accurate. Those are ones that she put together for this particular survey. And then the field notes that she provided are what will end up in those two tables and will drive her recommendations and that sort of thing.
So the fact that they didn't finish that yet, is that a ding on the first invoice or the second?
That we had asked that they have that for the final payment, the November 1 payment.
Mhm.
Because, yeah, so it's there's 3 milestone payments for the remainder of this contract. And that was not, that annual report was only something that we had requested that they get to us as soon as possible, but no later than the beginning of November, so that we could, or mid-November, so that we could review it, ask questions, and be in a position potentially to pay the November invoice.
Can you just summarize, for the first payment, we have the 3 ones about
Yep.
identifying the primary contact, detailed discussions,
Yep.
and the required data.
Yes,
Then for the next invoice, what are the requirements?
the interim report on the treatment results and other required data, including meeting either in person or by telecom with the Lake Boone Commission.
Okay. And then the November one is the final report.
Correct.
So they're really working on this interim report and final report as if they're one thing.
I would say that is true.
Okay. And it's clearly interim because whatever they sent to us is not complete. Now, the required data, I think that we're going to come down to a question. We have to get back to them, I believe, to say these are the observations that are required. If you
We have
haven't
done
done
that.
them, then we should deduct, in my opinion, from the payment some amount commensurate with what would have been the cost, or I mean, this is non-compliance. So that's what I'm thinking, is that if they didn't do it, they can't get paid for it.
Right, it
We
seems
don't- I
like
don't-
item number 3 on the first invoice, they've not completed. Which is the data.
Right. Well, we definitely, and as I said, there's real question as to whether there were any tests done in that survey, right? But we don't know that. And I did press with him again today about the water quality, so the clarity, the dissolved oxygen, temperature, and residue analysis, all of which are in the order of conditions and all of which are in the contract. Again, I referenced those specifically, and he said he would have to research that and see if that's, if they have that data.
I don't think they've ever reported on dissolved oxygen.
I don't think so either.
And the last one was the residue analysis. It's not clear to me they've ever done that.
Right.
Yeah, and in fact, the residue analysis is I think the most probably the most important one, because saying, does this stuff linger? And all reports and the quality, the EPA or whoever it is that reviews these have all said they don't linger and so on. So it, in some ways, it's pro forma, I suppose, just by the nature of the chemical, but they should, measure that. So I think, in my opinion, they have not completed. They haven't even confirmed whether or not they collected the data, let alone reported. So they haven't completed their requirement for the July milestone. And I think if they come back and say, guess what, we don't have these certain particular measurements, and we're going to have to calculate, in my opinion, some kind of a reduction of their payment.
Aren't they even saying that the residue analysis is not relevant for dicot? It's only relevant for sonar?
That was said previously, yes.
Yeah. That's the last discussion with them, I believe.
Let's see.
Conrad, Do
What's
you
the
believe the
total?
residue analysis is important in both cases?
I don't know. The trouble with residue analysis is, when did they do it? Or have they done it? If they haven't done it, at this point, it's,
Right, and they're not,
Not relevant anymore. Yeah,
exactly.
what's the total of those solitude bills due, Chris?
Oh, yeah. I don't know, you got your calculator there?
I do, we're gonna get one out. Here's one.
Yeah, let me see. I hadn't totaled them. What I got? 3, 9, 6. So the two together, not including the November one, is $6,250.
That's for the first two.
That's the first two.
Mhm.
And then
And the last one will be $1,562.50.
So we owe them about $7,000, $8,000.
Yeah,
will.
7,700 and 7,812.50. What if we make a payment to them, but not a complete payment to them?
Yeah,
Sure.
I heard what you're saying, Dan, and I don't, from a, emotional perspective, I completely agree that they still haven't even answered the question about whether they did these tests, which it to me is pretty bad. But we know they did the treatment. And so, a big chunk of this money is to pay for the treatment, and I'm inclined to pay the July bill and leave, and then we'll still have, a little short of $4,000, sort of sitting on the table, to negotiate if we feel like they have not complied sufficiently.
So we owe them
My-
78,12.50, right?
Sorry, say that again?
No,
78,12.50. The question becomes, how much leverage do we need to negotiate?
Well, I don't know. I mean, here's the thing, guys. The treatment's done,
Okay.
and
so
there's
let's
no additional work that's going to happen really from Solitude, on this contract.
So my suggestion would be to pay them like $7,000. Don't pay them the last 812. And then what they'll do is they'll say, yeah, we didn't do it, just forget it. So we get a little bit back for them not doing work. It's a little slap on the wrist, but the treatment did happen. The
Yes,
work did happen.
yeah.
I think
So
when push comes to shove, they will claim they've never done all those tests.
so then we'll
Right.
we'll take away $1,000 for every prior year that they didn't do it.
well,
You can't do that.
I think
No,
we
I
can
mean,
do that,
look,
Dan.
so Well, there are kind of two pathways here. We're either
Yeah.
going to just pay them to get rid of them and just get it done with, or we're going to have some kind of financial implication of their non-performance.
Yes,
And, maybe we need to check with Stowe accounting, but, if we pay for something that we know they didn't do, they're non-compliant. Now, we put these conditions because not only were they not doing that, getting the required data, but they were in communication. There were serious problems in the relationship.
yes.
So we said, here's the agreement. They agreed to it. We said, these are the terms. So they were going through the terms here, and I don't think they've complied with the terms of the first, you asked them again. They knew what we told them a couple of months ago what we wanted. So in my opinion, we should just stick with what we said, and fine, if you tell us, provide the required data that, the dissolved oxygen residue and so on. And if they have it, great. And if they tell us they don't have it, then we calculate, in my opinion, some kind of reduction and pay them the difference. I mean, what you're suggesting, I think, Chris, is that we'll hold off on the deduction until later. But we've said that all they have to do to get the September payment is submit the interim report, and the November's do the final report.
Right, but yes, that is true, and we still would have, so if we paid just the July one,
Mhm.
then that's a little short of $4,000. If we paid the July and September one, then we're at the 6,250. We still have a little over $1,500 that we would owe in November, which we could decide we're not paying, or we are going to constrain it a bit. The reality is they did the treatment. So they did expend the money and everything else to do that. They have done some surveys, whether we think they are, adequate ones or not, that remains to be seen. So far, we're not too confident about that. And we haven't stood on this for the last 2 years. So
I'm with Chris, I'm with you. I would see there's a downside of not paying them. What happens if they are sole source and they're our only vendor?
yeah,
And what happens if we play too much hardball and they come back and no bid? Then
Yep.
what do we
Well,
do?
maybe they'll do that, but also we're saying that if you bid, you need to carry through on what you bid on.
Yeah,
And
well,
we're
we
taking
absolutely
a
would do
stand.
that.
that's why
I think-
that's why we pay the 6,250 right now and wait on the other.
So
Well,
do we have further discussion, or should I call kind of the question on this one?
Let's call the question.
Okay, so do I have a motion?
My motion is to pay the 6,250 now to Solid to approve that bill.
wait, how much is that first one again?
So the
6250,
first
the
bill
and
is
second one.
$3,906.25. And the second bill is $2,343.75. And the total of those two is the 6,250.
So you're suggesting that we pay both of those,
Yes,
Yeah.
that's what he's suggesting.
and we haven't gotten the interim. They sent us an interim report that was incomplete and a wrong report.
Yeah,
Still
what
got
we
the
have
feet
is, we've got the
still in-
maps and we have the field notes at this point, and we're not gonna get an interim report. There's no, I don't even think there is such a thing. So at this point, we want to have a quality end of year report, which we should receive in mid-November at the latest. And that will drive us forward, but so that's.
Could we, as kind of a midway point, pay them the first bill?
Too little. You got to be careful, Dan. You're dealing with a company that may be your only sole source in the future. And, if you play hardball, if I was on the other side of the table and you did that to me, my price would double next time. Because it's the only place you can get the bid.
Well, they're already screwing us because they have the amount of time we've spent trying to communicate with them has been,
No way, Dan. They're screwing us on documentation and reporting and stuff. They didn't screw us on actually treating.
Right, so so we have a motion. I will second that motion. So further discussion, I think, before we vote, and I realize we may not have a unanimous vote here.
well, I'll go along with it in the interest of unanimity of voice.
We don't need to do that.
But I think I am concerned about what we're doing.
I hear you, and you can either abstain or you can vote against it, Dan. So is there any further discussion before we call the vote?
Just my little other comment is that, having been through this a lot, it's not a one-sided street. We did get most of our value from them. If you really think about it, our value was getting the lake treated.
Yeah.
The other stuff is documentation, which is good, but it doesn't affect the treatment. And with the Healthy Lake Initiative that you're doing, Dan, we've got so much other data coming in from other sources that, you know, that we're in pretty good shape.
Conray, isn't the data to help you steer the treatments and find out whether you need to do anything else proactively?
That's that data, it would be the survey data. So the survey data really should be done to determine what we have to treat.
Yeah.
And then the after treatment surveys determine how effective they were. So yes, the after treatment data is what we really use when we get the survey next year and say, hey, wait, you know, we weren't this effective last year, but I believe we were pretty effective this year. Is that a true statement?
I would say so.
So, from a straight treatment point of view, we're in pretty good shape.
So so the way I'm going to view this, having expressed my real reservations here, in terms of the required data, they in fact have given us the data that they have, right?
Yep.
And
Yeah.
in terms of having a primary contact and discussions, you're having those discussions. It's now past the logjam that went on for months that must have driven Red crazy trying to just reach them. In terms of the interim report, they have provided an interim report. They clearly acknowledged it was not complete, and they're going to, you know, correct it. But they gave us at least an interim report that had the map of, you know, a correct map. So, you know, calling that an interim report is probably the best description of it. But I still think that if they did not do some required task, when we come to the end in the final report, then I think we need to consider whether we should pay them for work not delivered.
We can do that in the November meeting.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so
Okay.
I'm gonna end discussion and put this to a vote. So we have on the table a motion to pay them the total of $6,250. Conray made the motion, I seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so all three of us are in favor, obviously with some reservations, but still.
But Chris, I'm not sure I've got the documentation on all that to submit to the town,
Documentation on all of what?
those 3 invoices.
Sure.
That's all I need.
Yep.
You know, if you guys want to create the invoice and put okay to pay and get them to me, then I'll send it in Hudson.
Yeah, that's what I do, Conray, is after this, I will go ahead. I mean, you have a copy of the invoices from back in July,
Oh,
and
I hope.
but we've been
Yeah.
holding them. So
Okay, good.
so you can just continue to just hold till
Done.
after this, and I will, you know, make the notations on them that we approved them, and
Done. Thank you.
we'll go from there. Okay, so, all right. The last one on bills to pay is our
Zoom.
Zoom account for October, and somewhere that's sitting in my folder. Somewhere in this mess. There, underneath the mess. Okay, so, and that's just for the 1 month. So that is the 14. God, writing is so tiny, I can't read that. 14.99.
Yep.
I motion to approve the payment of the Zoom meeting of bill of $14.99 to be reimbursed to Chris.
Second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that is unanimous. All right, I will put through those and send you guys the scans of that. Okay, moving on. End of season planning. So Conrad, I know you've got some of the buoys out. Thank you for that. And you said you have a couple more to pull in
I
over the
got
next
3
week
out
or
and
so.
3 to go. I guess I got 4 out.
I've got 2 and you said you had 2, so
Yeah, so we got 7 total, I guess. I got 3 more to pull out, which I'll do probably this weekend.
okay.
And then after that, I'll probably pull a boat and get, wash the crap off of it from pulling the buoys.
Okay.
And then once we get the boat out, the question I have is, can we afford to shrink wrap it?
So you said you believe that's like $300.
No, 250. I checked into it since I talked.
Okay.
And I don't know if our budget can take that or not.
I believe we would be okay with that. So if that is what we need to do, we can either,
It would sure make it easier for
Now?
me. Yeah, it's probably the best thing to do to it. Otherwise, I've got to figure out a place to keep it undercover.
and I gather just tarp, a large tarp is not effective.
No, it's worth it to shrink wrap them.
Dan, what do you think?
I think it's fine.
Okay, so do I have a motion to pre-approve up to $250 from our budget for Conrad to get the boat shrink wrapped?
I move that we do that.
All right, and I second that. Any further discussion? I think the only question I have is you're comfortable with storing it at your home?
Physically, I could find a place to physically put it. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I'll park it back near the shed.
Okay,
So I can hide it away for the winter, but my shelter's kind of full, so it's like,
Yeah.
wait a
No,
minute, where do I put stuff?
I understand that was an unusual circumstance last year trying to get that in there.
We did that.
So, okay, let's finish on that. So, any further discussion? No? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent. All right,
And
so,
as always, Conrad, thank you for everything about the boat,
Oh, you're welcome.
you know.
It
and
needs some repairs, but I'll do them.
yeah, that's excellent. So is there any end of season, just general maintenance? I don't remember if you often take it to,
No, I've been taking it over to Robinson at the beginning of the season for
Okay.
recommissioning. To put an outboard away and a boat like that away, basically you run the gas out of the motor, pull the battery out of it, and you're done.
Okay.
Then in the spring, you put a new battery in it, put some gas in it, and start it. Right now, the motor is in good shape. We spent quite a bit of money on that motor. It's running very well at the moment. The only issues the boat really has is shifting, and I don't know if that's a grease problem or whatever, but it's really hard to shift. But either way, I wouldn't deal with that now. I'd deal with it in the spring.
okay. Okay, so we have pre-approved you to spend the $250, Conrad, and appreciate if you can take care of that.
I will.
And then we will obviously approve the reimbursement at a future meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else on end of season? We're gonna talk about the boat motor moment.
Only that the drawdown has begun. As you may recall, when they did the work on the weir and the leak on the side of the dam, they did remove a half board. They've now removed another half board as of October 22nd. They'll continue that process in the normal flow of things. I did put in a special request at Kirk and Dave Gray's recommendation during this storm that we just had, maybe remove another board. However, Steve Nadeau from the Highway Department said that it was probably better not to do that because they didn't want to have a strong outflow into the Assabet, and they didn't want so much going through it might damage some of the work they're doing on the dam. Fortunately, we only had about 2.5, 3 inches of rain, not the potential 7, and so it was okay. So we'll continue, in a couple weeks or whenever it is to remove the next board and just work our way down.
Excellent. Thank you for that update. And thank you for staying on top of that.
Yep.
Chris,
Okay.
did you see the note from Kurt that he has something of an update on the water sampling, but he only has a few minutes before he has to leave?
No, I saw that pop up and I hadn't.
I don't know whether you have that on the agenda or not.
Um,
Well, let's just do it now, Chris.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
So we can, if we want to do a quick shift over to the agenda item on water quality, we can do that. Do you want to shift to that and then we'll come back to budget?
Yep.
All right, so we are now on our water quality, Healthy Lake Boone initiative, and maybe a very quick update on Cattell property. So Kurt, you said you have some information for us?
Yeah, I'm sorry to disrupt the budget discussion. I hate doing that. I'll do it anyway. We finished up the monthly sampling rounds for the lake in October this month. That was last month of scheduled volunteer sampling. What we found was very interesting. We've all seen the algae blooms that have been happening, particularly very frequently in the first basin recently. And what we saw during the last round of sampling, which was 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, was that the lake has turned over now. And that means that the thermal stratification that occurs in the summer, the warmer water on top and colder water on the bottom, has disappeared. It's consistent top to bottom in terms of its temperature. And what that means is that the denser cold water during the summer, which is trapped on the bottom, is now free to mix with the rest of the water. So it's one completely mixed tub of water out there. We saw some very, very high phosphorus levels in this last month, an order of magnitude higher than we've seen in the lake all summer. And what we are surmising, this is just a theory at this point, and it'll be confirmed when we get the sediment results. But one of the theories that we're working with is that when the lake turns over, it brings to the top all the phosphorus that comes out of the sediment during the summer when the oxygen is depleted down at the bottom. As we've talked about, when the oxygen is depleted during the summer at the bottom, at the interface with the sediment, that's what causes the phosphorus to unbond with the iron in the sediment and come back into the water. But because the water layers can't mix, it's trapped down in the bottom. Now, as the water mixes, it brings all of that phosphorus from the entire summer up to the top, where it receives light and can grow. And so the thinking here is that there weren't any rainstorms that were directly linked to these algae blooms. Nothing else significantly changed except the lake turning over. It was very clearly correlated with that time. And the phosphorus levels, again, that we saw corresponding with the turnover in the lake were an order of magnitude higher than we've seen throughout the year. So it does seem like the sediment is causing a significant portion of the problem, is producing a significant percentage of the total load of phosphorus. This is good news and bad news. It's good news in the sense that, okay, we've probably isolated a significant source of phosphorus in the lake. The other piece of good news is that during most of the summer, the concentrations of phosphorus in the lake were low enough not to cause algae blooms. And that's indicative of, especially with all this rain, it's indicative that, there isn't a single traceable source out there that is a smoking gun. That's a little bit of the bad news. There's no silver bullet because it's in the sediment. We can't link it directly to, is it fertilizers? Is it leaf litter? Is it pet waste? Is it septic systems? There's no way to do that once it's in the sediment. So the management measures that would come out of this, if this theory proves to be true, and we haven't proven it true yet, it's still a working theory, are going to be standard watershed measurements that we would take if we had identified a specific source. We're going to want to target the non-point source runoff from lawns, the fertilizers, things like that, as well as encourage septic maintenance, and maybe not be able to distinguish which of those two is more of a contributor or not. The good news, though, is that over time, if phosphorus levels in the lake continue to be what we saw this year, over time, those levels in the sediment will deplete and there won't be any more phosphorus to come back out of solution. So
Why would they deplete if they continue to go in from these other sources?
What we've seen then is a steady decrease in phosphorus levels from the 80s to the 2000s.
Oh, okay.
And that's a good sign. It's a very good sign. It's not indicative that we're there, but for most of the summer, most of the values that we took were beneath the target for the lake, which is good news. Now, in a dry summer, that may be a little different when the flushing isn't as fast. So we're going to want to continue to keep an eye on this going forward. But if we do get a handle on phosphorus loads into the lake and can continue that downward trend that we've seen over the last 40 years, eventually we'll reach a balance where, yes, there's still some going down, but there's not enough to come back out to cause these huge problems that we're seeing. The downside to that, again, there's a lot of upsides and downsides to all this, is that it may take longer to see and realize the benefit, because it could take 4 or 5 years for the loads in the sediment to really exhaust themselves. We will get a sense of that. The sediment results, the lab tests that were done, measured the release of phosphorus over time, and how over the course of 3 months in our summer, the load changed. And so we'll get a sense of how much may still be down there to be released, and what kind of balance there is to strike. But I think it's a big piece of the mystery that we're trying to solve is becoming evident. Managing it is another story, and we will bring in some limnologists to talk to you about what some of the options are. If this was a small pond, aeration of the bottom would be a very effective solution, because that would prevent the phosphorus that's there from getting out. But I think what we're going to be looking at is very comprehensive watershed management and best practices, and maybe doing some things to encourage more flushing, because we've seen that worked this year. Maybe unblocking those culverts. If that's a safe thing to do, I think we want to test that water for a lot of things first. But there are things I think that we'll do on a very comprehensive watershed-wide scale that will help. It just may take some time.
Yeah.
Kurt, did both the first and the second basin create a thermocline?
Yeah, much more in the first basin, but there was a little bit in the second basin. I have to look back at the data. Dave probably knows off the top of his head. I don't know if we saw the oxygen levels in the second basin get down as low as we did in the first basin. I don't think they ever got to really near zero, but there may have been a few pockets that did. It would have been isolated and not just this massive area of zero oxygen. Almost the entire first basin, Red helped us map this earlier in the spring. Almost the entire first basin is deep enough to have lost all of its oxygen during most of the summer. So that huge area of the first basin is all emitting this phosphorus that gets trapped out.
22 feet. First basin is 22 feet. Second basin is more like 10.
More like 10, and the deepest spot I think is 15. But we do see the oxygen begin to deplete. It just doesn't go as low as it does in the first basin.
Well, I'm also pleased that you're able to integrate the data collected over many years. I mean, that Conray certainly has been involved in from the earliest times, but because to see, I know we've had, those were limited in certain ways, but I'm glad it's providing helpful insights as well.
It is. There are some positive trends that we're seeing. And I think this year was certainly an anomaly with all the rain we got, and that has something to do with lower levels because the lake flushes more quickly. But, for most of this year, the phosphorus levels in the lake would not have been concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kurt.
Yeah, wow, that's very interesting.
It was fascinating. The big piece of the puzzle, I think, is starting to become a little clearer. Next piece is, looking at climate change, of course, and how do we actually manage this in a way that's effective in the short term and the long term. But this is a big step.
Well, I know that you have an 8 o'clock, sign off. So thank you for giving that report, and as always, Kirk, for the, you're putting heart and soul into this and not just your brain. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's wonderful work. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Kurt.
So shall we just wrap up this topic on water quality?
Yep.
Yeah. So, and as Kirk mentioned, we did do the final measurements of our annual series. We now enter the phase of the data analysis on an integrated sort of summary comprehensive basis, and then that will in turn lead to some recommendations. I did speak with Hillary King, who is the program officer at the state. She's very pleased with the progress we're making. She wanted us to just sort of define out the timing of those steps. We've also asked Rebecca who is our citizen science coordinator, but is also the conservation person in Bolton and has real expertise to spearhead the team working on the recommendation. So we'll come up with more stuff over the next few months, but I think this has really been a fundamental piece of information for the whole understanding of the lake, a real important process. So let me then also say something about the Cattell property, which is related to this.
Yep.
As you know, where we last left off, the Cattell family is selling the estate, the 16 acres. They have a buyer who has put a deposit and is prepared to do some development there if they can get all the approvals. They have proceeded in doing a brief presentation at the Hudson Conservation Commission for use of an open space plan to fit 20 homes along the shore. That would actually raise many concerns. So the Lake Boone Association took the lead on putting together a team to review and respond. And I was the liaison to that, from the LBC to that group. We produced something like a 20-page document, which I forwarded along to you. We had a lawyer take a look at it to make sure the law was good. We've had scientists looking at it, plus Larry Smith, who's a developer, was bringing in the developer's perspective. So long story short, we forwarded that both to Brian Jacobs, the developer, and we had an informal meeting with the head of the planning board in Hudson, whose name I'm suddenly blanking on here, with the help of Dick Gelbke, met with him. And the developer has in fact changed his plans. He is no longer going to do the open space plan about which we were so concerned because of this heavy development along the shoreline, is instead going to go with a conventional subdivision. There still are the same concerns. We want to make sure there's at least 100-foot, we hope for 100, maybe stuck with just 50, but at least, a significant buffer that is not disturbed from its current state along the shoreline. We also want to make sure that it isn't just a massive clear cut, that there's some careful designation of trees. There are a number of issues that are still, need to be reviewed, but we're now revising the recommendations to correspond to the subdivision plan and not just not the open space plan. The developer appreciates that we're in active communication with him rather than having this be a big public battle. He appreciates that input. And so, things are moving along here. And I don't know if Dave Sawerski, are you on?
I don't see
Yes,
it.
I'm here.
Yes.
Yeah, Dave, do you want to add anything as the president of the LBA?
No, I think you pretty much brought us up to speed on it. Really, at this point, the ball's in his court, I think, to come up with, deciding whether our recommendations are, worth his effort or not, and see what he comes up with, I guess.
Do we have legal grounds, Dan, to make those requirements, or are they just our wishes?
Well, no, every single one of the recommendations was delineated with a discussion of what the recommendation is, the science behind it, and the legal, which cited specific bylaw requirements. So, for example, the subdivision does in fact have a requirement of a 50-foot buffer in a certain bylaw in the way around a lake is part of the bylaw. So the legal requirements are a little bit different if it's open space versus subdivision, but we do also, as I mentioned, have a lawyer, Jamie Madeha Buchanan, who has real expertise in this and has given a detailed review of the recommendations from the legal perspective as well.
How many houses?
Pardon?
How many houses in the new plan?
Well, the 20, the same number that he was going to have, except that instead of it along the shore, they would be scattered throughout the land. Now, the the question still is whether those 20 comply with the full bylaws in terms of the length of some of the cul-de-sacs, in terms of the stormwater management, in terms of spacing, between the houses and setbacks and so on. It may come down to somewhat less than that, but at least they're not all chock-a-block along the shore.
And the few houses that are there now, are they staying?
No, they'd be torn down.
Okay,
There is a possibility that that house on the end of the point, in between third and fourth basins, might stay. I don't think so, but that would be part of the plans I need to work out. And also another very important point, the developers agreed that there will be no docks or private boats along the shoreline, possibly along the third basin, but certainly not in the fourth basin.
Too many stumps.
I mean, ultimately, he hasn't agreed to anything until he, puts out his plan. I mean, really what we've done is given him our recommendation on what we feel comfortable with him doing if he would like us to support him. Other than that, it's, he's going to do what he needs to do to build that land.
Right. Points well taken.
So one other thing you may or may not be aware of is that the Hudson zoning laws will probably change substantially in November.
Hmm.
And
Do you know what changes are?
I have the draft.
Can you forward that along?
I can, it's just a draft at this point.
Well, it would help, because if we do, adapt this based on the current, he would, I'm assuming that the applicable, it would be whichever ones are in place when the planning board or zoning board of appeals or whoever, or conservation commission votes to approve it.
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
new ones are in effect in November, then that would impact.
So the Hudson Town meeting's the November 15th, and it's on the docket. I have the draft. Who wants a copy of it?
If you could send it to me, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
And I'll forward it along to the team that's working on this.
Okay, just remember, it's a draft.
Yep.
and it seems like previously we were looking at the buffer zone was going to be owned by a trust. And it seemed like that was the mechanism that was going to stop boats and docks and things like that ending up there. It sounds like we're losing that.
Yes, the leverage that the Hudson had to have that, because in the open space plan, he had to designate a certain area as open space. And that area, which would be the shoreline, would be transferred over, responsibility given to like the Hudson Land Trust or something. And that would in fact be an important leverage, a solid ruling. On the other hand, with the conventional plan, we lose that requirement, except there still is a requirement for the 50-foot no disturb zone.
But how does he prevent there being boats and docks?
Our lawyer says that what we need is some kind of agreement as part of his plan or as part of the approval from the town that says there would be restrictive covenants in the deeds of the individuals that state that that's the case. Now, in fact, also the state is now strengthening its enforcement of the docks must have a permit, so that if they're going to put in a dock, it would have to be approved by the state in a process that, I'm one of the few who's been through, that in which it would be clear that they did not have the authority to do that if it were in their deed.
Wow. That's a lot of work. I read through the report, a lot of work that the LBA and Dan, you working with them, that's a lot. And clearly there's not a perfect answer one way or the other, right? So hopefully,
But I think we've certainly made progress in not having that 20 right along the shore,
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
Dan,
Dan,
I really want to say thank you to Dan for the amount of time he's been putting into this. Like I mentioned before, it's a good thing he's retired now.
There's a hell of a
The
document.
report did take a lot, yeah.
yeah,
yeah, well, there are a lot of people who worked on it, and in fact, Dave, your leadership, and also Larry's essential advice on strategy, our lawyer, and so on, and Kirk's advice on the science. So there are a lot of people working on it.
And Dan, we've made it clear to the developer that we think our recommendations still apply.
Yeah, I have a couple calls into him just to get, because we want to get the latest, his latest plan for what that subdivision plan would be. And I think he's still working on what, now that he's taken that plan seriously and taken that approach. But the town has really said that they want open communication here between the LBA and the developer to kind of work things through.
And the LBA being Big Lake community area, that's what they want. They want to make sure we're not going to be fighting with them, I guess.
Yep.
excellent. All right, thank you. Thank you all for that. All right, so we're jumping back to another agenda item above. So we need to have a little discussion about whether we're gonna try to pursue budgeting for a motor replacement, because that obviously affects our budget submission, which we have to provide to Hudson the end of this week. So let's spend a little bit of time on what we're thinking in that space, and then we'll go to the budget and determine kind of how that plays out. So Conrad, you had mentioned before you felt pretty strongly that it was time to look at getting a new motor. You indicated there's one size that is kind of what the boat was made for, but you could go a little smaller, so we could have a little bit of flexibility on our expenditure there. You're clearly the person with the most knowledge here. So,
And I just need to step out for a moment. Go ahead, but I just had to step out for a moment.
okay.
Chris, I did do a little checking, and the $8,000 number would give us probably, a 75 horse engine, which would be perfect for that boat. We're not trying to water ski behind it. We just need to get around. Even the 60 is fine.
So you're saying a 60 what?
Right now, we have a 60 on it. And,
60 what?
60
Horsepower.
horsepower.
Horsepower. Got it.
The
Okay.
original, that boat was designed for 90 horsepower. The 60 horsepower drives the boat to about 25 miles an hour, 28 miles an hour, which is fine. It's all we really need. So what I would do is I would leave the 8,000 in as a budget number. And then what's going to be really interesting, if we leave it in our budget, what I'll do is I'll go out and get bids for a new motor. And if we do bids, I don't know if we have to do a written RFP or not, but I'll figure that out. But I'd do bids on trading the motor in. So like JP over there in Acton, or actually Boxborough now, he'd probably take our old motor and trade, which means we'd get some value out of it. Cabela's won't do trades. But those are our two local places to get bids. And then if we do an RFP, we can press the trading of the existing motor in the RFP. So the way I think about this long term is if we start asking now, if we get turned down this year, next year it'll be a repeat request.
Yep.
So the other issue is, and I don't have any input, any knowledge on this one yet, is Stowe going to come up with a new safety officer for the lake? We didn't do much patrolling this summer.
Well, I know Mike is continuing also conversations with Hudson Police to potentially contribute to patrolling. But when I reached out to him to understand about, whether that was whether he had come to an agreement on that or not, he had not. And so he suggested we continue to plan for the same kind of budgeting for patrol, which is that we have to actually budget in the budget for Hudson to pay a third. The other 2/3 is covered in the Stowe Police budget. So yeah, I know he's continuing he wants to have a safety officer. He's just, I think, still working on to figure out how he can do that. So it's not, I guess it's just not as easy as it used to be.
We used to pay league less than going rate.
Correct.
I
And
guess
they
that's
can't do
the
that.
issue going forward.
Right, right.
Did anybody get any comments on patrol this summer or missing patrol or, Red?
I
You
did
were out
not have
there.
anybody complain or question or anything.
I think the most visible part was more jet skis out there playing.
Yes.
I think the rest of the boating activity was pretty much normal, the same offenders, but no more. Well, and the one thing I would say is more of the wake boats, which I consider,
We have one extra of those on our basin this year we didn't have last year.
yeah.
Actually, there's a couple other ones, but they never go out. Yeah, so my only concern long-term is the jet skis. Hudson and Stowe responded to the two that were causing problems, and I don't think they ever came back. Because that's typically the way we've always done it. We stop them, we explain what they're doing wrong, we explain the consequences of that, and they decide that they don't want to be on a lake that has some patrol on it.
Good. Yep.
Which is always, that's what we've
Good.
done forever. Most of the off-lake people that cause trouble, you read them the riot act and they never come back.
Mhm.
Right. Okay, so Dan, why you were gone, I don't know if you heard any of it, but basically Conway confirmed that we could kind of the minimum, we could do probably fine with a 60 horsepower motor. He feels like the $8,000 that I threw in is potentially at the high end, but certainly would cover that, and that we might have an opportunity if we decide to do that to get some trade in on the existing one. So we might not have to do that. And his suggestion is that we put it into the budget this year. If it gets cut, at least we've started the process.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, Conrad, you were going to add something?
The biggest problem with the patrol right now is shifting. It doesn't shift very well. In fact, it's a pain in the butt to shift, even if you're doing what you're doing. And sometimes you think it's in neutral and it's not.
Would this replacement of the motor, could that include fixing the shifting problem?
So the way that outboards work is it's a two-part problem. You have the control mechanism that goes from the cockpit up front back to the motor.
Yep.
And those can fail, and that's probably the real issue. And then there's how the motor the shifting operation actually happens. So if we get a new motor, we will get new controls and the new motor. You replace the control and the motor at the same time. And a new motor might be a full electric one. The old motors are cables, physical cables that go from the front of the boat to the back of the boat and do the shifting. A lot of the new stuff is all what we call fly-by-wire. It's just wires. There's no cables anymore. And that would be a really nice upgrade to have. That's what my ski boat is, and most of the ski boats, half the ski boats in the lake are fly-by-wire and half of them are shift-by-wire. Shift-by-wires are the difficult ones.
Yeah, well, I guess I think we should unequivocally support this, getting the motor replaced and other repair, shifting, or whatever else it needs to get this boat reliable. We've seen that it is increasingly important, especially when we don't have a safety officer in place. And I think that, the way we got over the long run was an incredible bargain, through your generosity. And I think that we should not, and as you say, what's going to happen? Suddenly it's going to break, and then we're going to be stuck. And I think we're doing it. The argument is strong. And I think the lake's visibility in the town has increased over the years. I think, just more people moving in, upgrading, and with the need for it is becoming stronger. I think an $8,000 allocation shared between the two towns, maybe if it's even 10,000, to make sure we're doing it right. I think we should not sort of go in with this cautiously of saying, oh, well, if we don't get it this year. I think we should expect and try to get it this year. If we don't, that's our plan B, is to wait a year, but we may not have that luxury. And I think it's essential.
Yeah, I agree with it. This boat will go forever. It's an aluminum boat. We might have to do some maintenance on it, physical maintenance like painting and stuff. Dave Zareski and I did that when we first got the boat. So we might have to do some more of that, but you're right. You're absolutely right. And you mentioned something that's really important, that a motor in this boat is a shared expense between the two towns. If Stowe tries to upgrade their patrol boat, it's on Stowe 100%.
That's a good point.
And
So, Conrad, do you feel that $8,000 number is a good number to use?
yes, I did some research once I saw the budget and found out that, yeah, it works. Now, that was before inflation and supply chains and, all the crap that's going on now.
Yep.
But, when I looked at it a couple months ago, it looked fine. So I think we could probably do it for that. And what you missed is if we do an RFP, which would be pretty simple, we'll request that someone take the old motor and trade. And the guys in Boxborough, drawing a blank on, JP's the owner, but they would be happy to take the old motor and trade, whereas Cabela's won't.
Yep.
And
Okay.
those are basically the two. Well, I guess Doug Russell. There's three people I would go to for a new motor. Doug Russell up at or JP or Cabela's are the three local dealers, or three reasonably local dealers.
Okay, so it sounds, we don't need to have a motion on this right now because we're going to talk about the budget. It sounds like we feel that there's enough rationale. I can tell you that before we turn in the Stowe budget, we will have to have some justification for that. So we're gonna have to, start working on, what's
That's
the
easy. That's
justification.
pretty easy. We spent, I think, $1,200 fixing that engine in the last year.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's some.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm just saying, I think we're gonna have to do a little bit of work on that.
Yep.
Because, but okay, so, all right, so I think we're done with that. What's that?
Chris, we won't have any trouble in Stowe.
We might.
We might, but I doubt we will, because the person that would cause the trouble is not around anymore. So the last time I tried to get something through Stowe was happy to do it, but Don stepped up and shot it down personally. So I don't think that'll happen this time, because in the scheme of things, these numbers are tiny.
They are, and that's what strikes me, is that, again, I go back to the point that I think the Lake Boone's visibility and sort of respect and prominence is sort of gaining. And I think that amount in our total budget from the Stowe perspective, I think is, and especially, given all we're doing is replacing a motor, not getting a whole boat, and it's already costing all the rationale, I think we can do it.
Yeah, thank you. I agree. And you're right about the lake, stepping up. The other thing that people need to understand is the tax. All of us who own houses know that the same house off the lake has, 2/3 the tax bill or half the tax bill. So the towns are enjoying substantially extra tax revenue from
Mhm.
houses on the lake.
Mhm.
And that means we need to take care of the lake so we can maintain the tax base.
Yep.
So that's something we always want to talk about when we talk about healthy lake or
Mhm.
retreatment or drawdown or a new motor. It's all about maintaining the lake to maintain the quality of the water and the safety on the lake to maintain the tax base.
Good points. Alrighty, so I think we're done then with that agenda item, and we are on to our
That's
budget.
okay, good. Thank
So
you.
let me,
So now we're going back to item number 6, the budget.
Seven,
Yes?
budget.
6 is budget, 7 is vote.
Oh, on mine, it's the opposite.
Okay, I might have the. I might-
Oh, okay.
All right, either way,
Either
Well,
way,
whatever, it's the budget.
it's the
Yeah.
budget.
okay. The budget. All right, let me, it's gonna
Is it cheaper if we call it number 6? Because that's a lower number?
it'll make any difference. And we won't get out any sooner either. All right, I'm gonna share my screen, I think.
While you're doing that, thank you, Chris, for handling the budget. That's a complicated set of things. You gotta gears you have to intermesh and so on. And you put a lot of work into it and appreciate it.
Welcome. I don't think that that just worked. Hang on, how come that's not?
Well, I have the one you sent out. the
That's
draft.
right, I got it. I got it here. Just didn't do what I expected.
We see it.
Excellent. All right.
Ooh, yeah, this is filled in. The draft wasn't.
Yeah, I added a few more things based on discussions. All right, so I just left in, the past couple of years, just so we have reference there. And so,
I'm sorry, Chris, just a question. Have you sent this to us?
you,
I don't think so, Chris. The one I have, the latest one I have is doesn't show all this. This is good.
So
Okay.
if you could just forward it after the meeting with any updates or whatever.
I didn't think about that. I did make a few tweaks since I sent it to you guys. And basically because we got answers to a few things. So,
Yep.
all right, so let's just start here at the top. So in our general operating budget, we generally have allocated money for water testing. I have a question, and probably Dan, you're the best one to answer this at the moment. I added a little bit more this year than last year, but I'm wondering, is that necessary, or is a lot of the testing going to be happening through the Healthy Lake Boone?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Chris. The Healthy Lake Boone funding continues to the end of June. We will include, we believe we'll have some balance of budget to do some additional testing in perhaps in May, maybe April, sort of, after the ice melts and so on. So that can come under the MVP budget, but that ends at the end of June. Now, we have volunteers. Dave has the instruments that he can go around and do that. We may continue the volunteer program, but there may be some lab costs.
Yep.
So I guess I should follow up this meeting and discuss, especially with Dave Gray, about the scope of the budget if we need an allocation, a change in the allocation from the town.
Okay, so because I have to literally submit this by this Friday.
So I will ask him tomorrow.
Well,
let's start with this. Let's start with this as the number to begin with.
for the 600.
Yep.
And if you feel strongly that we're gonna need more, let me know. We won't drop it to less, because just the cost of analysis, on our drawdown ones and everything else is gonna go up. So, so I would say it's not gonna probably drop much, if anything. So we'll stick with the 600 for that. So boat maintenance, so I dropped it to 1,000 because I was budgeting for an engine replacement. Now, that's, a question. If we don't get the engine replacement, then we're probably low on the kind of the boat maintenance.
Yes.
So, what are your guys' thoughts?
Oh, you get maintenance with 1,000.
Sorry, what?
Somebody's pretty with nuts. No, that's good, Chris, the way you've got it.
Okay,
Because
so leave it.
Even if we don't get a motor, because I spent so much money last year, I think the motor will squeak by next season. The biggest thing I might have to replace are the controls.
Yeah.
And that's like $300. So.
Okay,
That's
so
a
we'll
good
leave at the 1,000 for that. So the next one was kind of the buoys, chains, lights, that kinds of stuff.
Biggest thing there is gonna be those freaking lights have gone up. They're $100 each now.
Yeah,
I gotta look in at maybe if there's cheaper ones, but that's a good number.
okay.
Chris, are the buoys in front of your house, are both of them lit at night?
Today they are not, but they have been some days.
Okay,
Oh yeah, they both have been blinking red, but they're not today.
okay, thank you. So, that. Anyways, yeah, that's just something, we'll replace what we have to. I've been pretty good at repairing them, but, so,
Okay, so we'll leave that with the 500 because we bought the extra chain already this year, kind of to
Correct.
spend money, so we should be all
you have
right
a good
with
memory.
All righty, so then just the other operating expenses, things like if we have supplies we need, postage, boat gas, Zoom. The one thing that that I don't really feel like is covered in here is if we have to do another
Mailing.
notice to abutters for any, any reason. And I don't,
Yeah, the two, we have to do it every 3 years for the, I don't know if we have to do it every 3 years. We did have to do it for the drawdown
no,
because it was a new permit. But we certainly, in any case, neither of them are up for renewal this coming year. So
okay,
there may be other notices we have to do for some other
Yeah.
reason, but not for that.
okay, because that was a big chunk. The stow side of that was, a lot more money than I want to spend every month, every year. So, all right, so then we feel like 1,000 is good on that number? Just to
Sure.
cover other stuff?
Sure.
So,
Yep.
Chris, a question for you. In Hudson, they don't care about these line item breakouts. So,
It's funny, Connie, you're right. They didn't ask. And when I dealt with Tom last year, he said, I don't need all this. Just give me, the top number. And then when I went to their meeting, they're like, well, how come we don't have the detail? And thankfully
think-
Tom was there.
that
and
wasn't my question. That wasn't my question.
Oh, okay.
Although what you're saying is accurate. So yeah, the selectmen like to see the breakout. But when it's time to spend the money,
Yes,
they don't care about the breakout.
that's true.
But Stowe does.
Not so much, I don't think.
Okay. So
I don't get asked, I put through things and it's not like they say, oh, you don't have enough money in that bucket. They don't really care. They just want to understand the justification for how we come to a number.
Okay, so that's important. So that means that, the total number, if we have if we have to spend more money on one line item and less on another, we can move that money around ourselves.
Yes.
And that's important. Okay,
Yes.
that was
Yep.
my real question.
Yeah, sorry. I should have just shut up and let you ask it.
Ah, you did fine. You did. We gotta give data to the people so they can see it, but
Yeah.
then we get to manage the bottom line. That's all that counts.
Okay, so then the boat and trailer insurance, I did reach out to Denise and the selectman's office, because that's kind of where, it was raised last year that we might have to pay for the insurance. Far as I know, we have not been charged yet this year for any insurance, and Denise indicated that she just didn't have time, this week to look into that, or before, the end of this week to look into that. So she suggested that we go ahead and budget for it. So I have done that. Just budget in case they do want us, to pay for that. And then we have the $8,000 budget for the engine replacement. And let's see. And then there's specific to Hudson, there's the $1,667 for the police patrol, that we have to include in the Hudson budget. We won't have to include the counterpart for Stowe.
Are you sure about that?
Yes,
So we don't pay for patrol, it's all out of police budget now
no,
instead?
Hudson, it does, so Hudson portion of the 5,000, you have to pay the third, but the Stowe police budget that covers the Stowe side, so we don't put in the counterpart in our budget. It's already covered in the police
Okay.
budget. Yep. And that's been that way now for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, so,
Mhm.
and that's not changed. And I did confirm with the chief, that keep this number, the 5,000 as the number, because he doesn't have any other number at this point, so
Very good.
we'll do that. All right. All right, so now that's kind of our general operating stuff, and I'll tweak
Let me
the,
just sort of make sure I follow.
Yep.
That if we look at the subtotal for the towns and you go from 20 to 21, 22, and 23, that if you take out the 8,000, from the 11,600, that's 3,600. Last year it was 3,800. So we're actually less than last year.
we're a little less because we budgeted a little less for boat maintenance.
Yeah.
That's
Okay.
basically it. We
All
went
right.
up
Again, it's very small amount. So
very, very small. We went up 100 for additional water testing. And then we didn't budget we dropped, the 400, so a net of 300, probably 300.
and the 8,000 is in our budget, not a capital budget, because
Correct.
it's under 10,000.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So now comes the challenge part. This is where my eyes.
Okay, let me just go back a second. In the interest of efficiency, let's just leave the 600 for water testing. The reality is we could easily increase that by a few thousand. We don't have that money to allocate to it. If I went and said, let's continue some testing, we may end up saying the Lake Boone Association will cover those costs or something. But I think whatever the number seems reasonable, let's just say that that's LBC's contribution to that testing. Let's just leave it with the 600.
That's good. I'm good with that.
Okay, Chris, the other thing is that the budget we were just going over,
Yeah.
that's the budget that the selectmen care about. The other money for weed treatment is always warrant money, which is
Yes.
separate.
Correct.
And
Correct.
warrants aren't due right now in Hudson, are they?
No, but what I don't believe that they're due yet. But it kind of fills out our budget, so.
Yeah, so let's just, if we could just for a moment, when will be the next town meeting?
In which town?
I mean, we
So-
have one on the October 30th, just this weekend, but
Yeah, so
when's the next one? The one that would review
the spring.
spring?
The spring town meetings is when we review budgets for the next year. I mean, when
And-
we get, those go to the town.
So
You don't
the
think it's
review
due-
of the herbicide budget, so what I'm thinking is, will we have a new bid in time maybe that's the driving force for when we make a decision. I don't know when we have to submit. This is a 5% increase, a perfectly reasonable estimate, but in fact, the actual numbers we would get in whoever's responding to our RFP. Maybe we'll have that in time to have some actual numbers here.
Yeah, so yes, that is true. I'm not sure when we'll have to submit our warrant article.
Usually around the beginning of January in Hudson.
Yeah, I was gonna say, let me just look at, yes, Hudson Town warrants is January. And at least that was last year. And Stowe Town warrants are finalized in beginning of March. So we won't have a contract, right, ready by then. But one of the things to know is that we've already budgeted for May of 2022 because we have to, which I'm kind of hoping when we
Yeah.
finally get to a new contract,
Yeah.
we can do it on an annual basis and not.
Yeah, yeah,
But-
yeah.
But so it aligns with our fiscal year. But anyway, this one.
So that 22,000 is already approved.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. And it was
Good.
just, that was part of our 2022 budget that I had to
Yep.
put in, and that we got approved at warrant. So
Yeah.
at town,
It
So
has to be
now-
because we have to pay it.
right. So now what we have to do is think about, all right, let's say, hopefully 22,000 covers some
Yeah, yeah,
appropriate portion. Maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be May, but anyway, some portion of the next contract.
yep,
And we have to figure out what we need to budget in the 2023 budget that will run, and depending on the cycle of that
Yep.
actual contract. But I'm just for the moment assuming that it will be the same thing, so it will have to run through May, some allocation in May. So that's where I have, we can throw in down here just some our current contract in year one was 28,687.50, right? And that's usually because we have a larger treatment that first
Yep.
year, so we're kind of going into that. So if we did a new contract and we figure, well, it might be 10% bigger, then then that's where we're going to be at 31.5. If we think it's more like 15%, then we're going to be at 32, and almost 33. And we're not going to know how much or what percentage. So we're gonna have the budget for the year period. It's just whatever the total is the total for the next year. So what do folks
You
think?
can wait on that one until December, January.
Yes, but we're not gonna have any more information really by
We
then.
might.
but it does emphasize the importance of us moving quickly on that.
Yeah.
And
Conway,
go ahead, Fred.
which month does usually the first treatment get done?
Nay,
Is that March, April?
In May.
nay.
Is it as far out as May?
So don't confuse when the treatments get done versus when we pay for things.
Right.
Right.
So the treatments are supposed to be done with the current chemicals. You have to do them when the plants are actively growing.
Okay, gotcha.
So you can't do it too early or too late. So the
yeah.
timing is kind of important. Now, this new chemical they're talking about, I don't know how that one works. you know, the other ones, the plants have to be actively going, so they ingest the chemical, it stops photosynthesis and the plant dies. But I don't know how this new chemical works.
Yeah, you may recall, Red, this year, because Solitude didn't provide the survey information in time, we had to delay the treatment. I think it was just getting to the tail end of that prime time that Conray refers to.
Right, right, yeah.
Yeah, he went into June 6th or something.
Yeah.
I just didn't know whether all the previous years were in similar time frame or not.
The years we had our act together, it was May. The years we didn't, it was June.
Okay,
May is better because the plants aren't so big.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the Healthy Lake Initiative stuff, because remember, when the plants grow, they're pulling phosphorus out of the lake, and nutrients out of the lake. But they grow big, then they go back to the bottom and they dissolve on us again. So, you know, this is beyond my, so I like to see them treated early enough so they don't get very big, so we don't have a lot of big dead plants down there.
right. And it's a month or two later than ice out.
Usually.
So you guys just want to hold on the warrant
Yeah.
element here?
You can leave it
Yeah.
in here and just put down, you know, back its estimates, waiting for new contract data. So just add a note to you've got it already there already, new contract required. So you've got it, you've done a really good job, Chris. It's perfect.
Yep.
Okay. All right then. So what I'm gonna do tomorrow is go back through the documents I got from Hudson and just make sure exactly how they want it. I'll send this spreadsheet out to you guys tonight, so you have this. So we need to actually have a motion to approve this operating budget, the 11.6.
So moved.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All right, so, and just before we finalize, the Hudson portion of the patrol, last year was a warrant article. And so I need to just follow up with them to see if that's the case again this year. I think it was. Am I wrong about that, Conray?
I don't know.
Or maybe it was, we had to do an amendment to the budget.
That's what we did.
That's what we did. All right, so then I do need to include that.
You've got it right, because last year, in order to pay Stowe's share of the police budget, Hudson's share of the Stowe police budget, we had to have an article on the fall Hudson Town meeting last year.
Yes, that's it. You're right. So, okay, so what we be submitting as our budget is the 11.6 as our general, and then an additional 1,667 on the Hudson budget.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay. So
what the towns are going to care about is the next line over. That,
correct.
you know, that.
Yep.
Hudson's
I care
looking
about
at
these.
5534 for Hudson.
Yep.
You got to go down the rest of the way to look at the total budget.
Yes, for that one.
And what's wrong on this, but I don't care, is in last year, the FY22 numbers, we did in fact, maybe you got it. I don't, yeah, you do got it. Never mind.
Yep. Yeah, the thing that happened last year with the Hudson was they they lowered the amount to 980 versus the 1,000, but yeah, we put in the 1667 later in the year. So
yep, you got it.
okay, so this is what we are really essentially approving here. So we have motion and we have a second. Any further discussion? All right, so all in favor of submitting, this is our budget.
Aye.
Aye. That is unanimous, so we are approved. Okay. All right, so I will, as I said, I'll send you out this spreadsheet. I don't have to do any changes to it right now. I'll send this out tonight. Tomorrow, I'll work on it in the format that has to get submitted to Hudson. That's the only one we have to submit to. And I will copy you guys on that and then submit. I will actually formally submit to Hudson either tomorrow or Friday morning.
Excellent.
Great.
Okay, phew. All right, that gets us down to old business. Any old business? No, great. All right, new business. So, thinking ahead for what needs to happen probably in our next meeting. We will have another solitude bill, which we always have bills for payment, so that's not a worry. We should have the annual report from them. So that will definitely need to be on our list of things. And we're okay with all our order of conditions. December, I have to submit, well, they haven't told me the deadline, but generally December, we have to submit our budget to Stowe. And also have the weed treatment article ready. Yeah, so I don't think, aside from kind of the annual report continuing on our, so we'll put the RFP as a key thing for our next agenda.
Do we need to approve the RFP, or have we already said we want to proceed with an RFP? So we've designated that, Red and I and Kathy proceed.
I don't know, but I have, my sense is that we should probably review and approve the RFP before it goes out.
My concern is that that just adds another delay. It may be a month till we meet again, and maybe it'll take a month to get the RFP in place, but we're trying to accelerate it. So I'm wondering if we can. We
Just
know.
circulate it?
Yeah, yes, and in fact, you've already seen we distributed the previous one from 2016, so that's already, and we'll only do modifications from that. So I'm wondering if we can authorize us to proceed on that level.
I am okay with that. So do what Red said, circulate it when you're done with it.
Yep.
And if any of us have serious objections to it, we'll have to call an emergency meeting to deal with them.
Yeah, that sounds fair, because we can have a one topic meeting if we need to.
Right.
Okay. All right. So date of next meeting. We've already got our numbers for the Stowe submission. We will have to probably start on the warrants. So I would say that probably we may not have to meet in November, but we certainly will have to meet maybe early December.
December 1st.
Sounds good.
The first Wednesday?
Yep.
I'm open.
Yeah. I don't see anything at the moment in mind. All right, let's target that. And are we ready to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Bye-bye.
All right, all in favor?
Right.
Aye.
All right.
Dan, are you in favor?
I'm here.
In favor, okay.
Yep.
All
Have a
right,
good night now.
all right. Thanks,
All right,
guys.
take
Bye-bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.